Hey everyone, it's Justin. Thank you for watching and welcome to my house. That's Justin's house. In this video, I have a special treat for you. Certified Master Architect Mike Heron comes to us and shows us ChatGPT and ServiceNow, but there's a twist, everybody. ChatGPT writes its own integration with itself into ServiceNow. I'm not going to say any more. Let's get right to it.
My name is Mike Heron. I'm a Certified Master Architect working at Crossviews. I've been working on ServiceNow for around about 11 years. I started off as a customer or a user of ServiceNow and quickly got the bug and started building things and playing around as I think everybody does. I worked my way up to being an admin, to a developer, to a consultant, to an architect, and now I have a dual role. It's delivery manager in the UK / platform architect.
Okay.
So that's me. Yeah, I'm a bit of a nerd, Justin. I love playing with gadgets and gizmos and any kind of new tech. It's right up my street.
Okay, so then besides ChatGPT and ServiceNow, what have you geeked out on recently?
My home media setup is my baby. Well, it's a few things, right? I mean, I built a new PC, so I have a monstrous gaming rig with a 4090 and a 13900K CPU. So it's my little baby under my desk. But my home media setup is my favorite. I use a Synology NAS to allow my whole house to have my whole media collection everywhere wireless.
Oh wow,
which is amazing.
Any VR incorporated into that?
Not yet. You know what? That's the one problem with my office. It's like a thin tube all the way down, so you can see the wall, like it's right here.
Okay.
So there's no space for VR yet, but that is the one thing I wish I had. I think I'm looking forward to the PSVR 2.
ChatGPT, you stumbled across this probably like the rest of us. Everybody's talking about it and experimenting with it. Does that sum up pretty well how you kind of encountered it?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the first person who got me on it, but essentially in the UK, in Crossviews, we were talking about AI-generated art and copywriting and what it all means. It was such a fascinating conversation. We all dived in with different views, and I think somebody linked ChatGPT and were like, "Hey, this is really cool. Go play with it." And you know, I'll come right out of the gate and say, you know, I haven't been a big fan of AI implementations to date. I've been quite skeptical of what they can do, what they can achieve, their purposes, their use cases. Immediately blown away by ChatGPT. And the more I learn how to speak with it and how to talk with it and how to get the right information out of it, the more it scares me, in a good way.
Yeah, when you said that, you reminded me, like, my exposure to AI, and I'm assuming it's been like this for you, has been ServiceNow's use of that term. Machine learning, AI, and around predictive intelligence and kind of finding solutions. And this seems like a totally different take on what you and I have come to know as AI, at least through ServiceNow's lens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, I can't quite verbalize what's different about it because, you know, ultimately it's doing similar things to what we've seen in the past. But I think the thing for me is the fact that this AI, this model has been trained. Its primary purpose is to replicate natural language, you know, in a conversation with a human.
Right.
And more often than not in other AI implementations, you know you're talking to a robot. But with ChatGPT, when you start getting into the flow of a conversation and you're asking it things that maybe you spoke about a few days ago in a thread, or contextually jumping around like you would with a human.
Right.
And it knows what you're talking about. I mean, that's the game changer for me. It's like, hey, we talked about that 3 days ago, and it was this bit here. I think that's what's different.
Yeah, and I don't want to steal your thunder for the actual showing this, but when you were showing me before this call, you were saying something like, it remembered that you asked for a particular type of icon, so when you asked for the next thing, you didn't ask for the icon, but it put it in there anyways, because it knew you had asked for it.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of those, like, Skynet moments where I was sat there like, that's a good icon, but I didn't tell it to pick that icon. How did it know? I mean, it's impressive, to say the least. And, you know, it's early doors, as far as I'm aware, with this sort of platform, this sort of capability. But I know the tech world is going crazy for it right now. And I think I read, was it Microsoft recently announced they're embedding it in with their Bing search engine, so... Yep. The big players they're watching, they're listening, they're working.
Yeah, my understanding, and I saw that article yesterday too, is that Microsoft is one of the backers of OpenAI, which is who produced ChatGPT, who also did the Dolly 2, which you saw in one of my videos.
Saw in your video, yes.
So good. Yeah. So with this one, what was your goal in mind? Were you just experimenting, or did you have like an end thing you were trying to get to?
Yeah, I was talking to one of my good friends, a guy called Tom, over Christmas, and we were playing around. I was hosting a quiz with my friends, like a drinking quiz type thing, and I was wondering, could I get the bot to do the quiz for me? Could it be a quiz master? So I was asking it things like, are you familiar with Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And he was like, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I was like, let's play. I'll be a contestant, you be the host. Ask me 15 questions, they get harder. And it was like really, really cool. And then I was like, okay, I wonder if I could build a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire game within ServiceNow that integrates with the bot acting as a host. And then I was like, okay, no, that's too far. Let's rein it back. I was like, let's see if we can just get the bot to build an integration with itself and start there. So that's where we started. Was where I started on a slow afternoon, and just thought, let's see how far we can take this. So. As a one-liner, the concept is, can we get ChatGPT to build its own integration with itself from ServiceNow to ChatGPT and produce an interface as well that a regular end user will know how to use and be able to converse with the bot?
Yeah, I think that's worth underscoring and double-clicking on, is that what you said it twice there, getting the bot to write the code to integrate its own self into ServiceNow, and that was where my mind was like, whoa.
Yeah, I didn't write a single line of code. It was all the bot. I will stress, I had to take the input from the bot, copy, paste it into the appropriate fields. But I set out thinking, I've worked with ServicePort a lot. I built a lot of integrations, bit of a geek like that. But I set out thinking I might have to tell it to do things in a certain way, but the goal was try not to influence it too much and see how far it will get on its own. And it was it was interesting to say the least.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want to share it now that we've been talking about it? Do you want to show what it actually does?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the ServiceNow service portal. All I did was create a placeholder service portal record, went and created a blank page, opened up the form for a new service portal widget, and for those that are familiar with it, you get the HTML field, the CSS, the client script, the server script, and then the link fields to basically build your own widgets using a combination of HTML, AngularJS, obviously JavaScript, and ServiceNow's Glider. Don't be put off by the colors and the layout, right? That was all picked by the bot. It's a bit partial towards purple and blues. I had to ask it like 3 or 4 times because the first color set was just like this crazy 1995 red blue, like hitting you so hard like a flashbang. So a couple of prompts to say, hey, can we go a little bit softer and a little cleaner, until we got on a color set that wasn't too terrible. But yeah, this is the service portal widget, and it was built entirely by ChatGPT. Now, what I mean by that is, I started off by asking the bot one simple question, and I tried to keep my the language that I use with the bot almost at a business analyst level, right? So trying to put the ServiceNow knowledge away to one side and just say, hey, as a business user sort of thing, I'd love to have a widget that I could interact with ChatGPT on. And I'd love to be able to ask you questions through ServiceNow's service portal. So the first question was something along the lines of, hey ChatGPT, could you write me the code, the HTML, the CSS, the client script, the server script for a ServiceNow service portal widget to integrate with yourself? And a couple of seconds later, it produced the first iteration of code. Now I'm not going to sit here and tell you that it was perfect, because it wasn't, right? I want to make sure everyone understands. This took about 3 hours of talking with the bot. But the first set of code wasn't terrible, right? It gave me a couple of gave me an input field, it gave me another input field that I told the bot was going to have an answer in it, and it gave me a button, the little send button that you can see in the bottom right hand corner. It also had a first stab at creating the REST message and the integration with itself using an endpoint that it thinks it can use. Needless to say, none of it worked. So after I pasted the code in, the first thing I did was essentially just try and try and get the UI a little bit cleaner, a little bit more modern, a little bit more spaced out, that kind of thing. So my prompts to it were, hey, let's go for like a central column sort of layout with one box above the other. They should fill the width of the container, and we'll have the button in the bottom right hand corner. For each text input box, I want them in a panel with a title and an icon to the left. For the first box, this one up here, I want a little user icon. And I said, this is where users will ask you questions. I said, for the second box, let's put a little robot icon. That's where your answers will be shown to the users. So again, we're only 2 questions in right now with the bot, but we managed to basically produce this form. Once we had that nailed down, I then started trying to figure out where the bot had gone wrong with the API script itself, which is kind of ironic because that's the bit it should know the most, right? It's its own API. But in the end, there are a couple of simple tweaks. I did have to go and check the doc site for ChatGPT, and all it did is it just got the wrong method call at the end of its own API. So the robots aren't taken over just yet. But once we nailed that, we had a functioning page with a functioning API and response back. So I'm just going to demonstrate it, I guess, right? So the very first thing I asked the bot was, what is the French word for hello? And if I type that in and press send, I get an answer back, which is bonjour, right? Not too crazy, nothing too special there. Can you write me a poem? Maybe not poem. Can you write me a summary of what ServiceNow is used for? So some people might be watching this, and this might be their first view of what ChatGPT is. It's this crazy bot that has been trained on a data set that is vast and expansive. So you can ask it things about large SaaS platforms like ServiceNow or Salesforce or anything like that. You can ask it about Shakespeare. You can ask it about languages. You can ask it coding problems. And if you're anything like me and you're a programmer and you hate regex, it's really, really good at regex.
I love that.
So that simple question there, can you write me a summary of what ServiceNow is used for? It's given me a little snippet of information about what ServiceNow is used for. That was the goal. It was just get the bot to write that kind of an interface, produce an interface with an integration, and get the bot to do it all using business language as a way of sort of tweaking and shaping things up.
Sure.
Once I had that core, the next bit was just tidying up a few other bits. So it was, adding this little history panel at the bottom just to track what was being said between the bot and myself. And towards the end of the project, a friend messaged me and said, after I shown him, and said, it'd be really cool if you could get speech input put in place. And he'd shown me a few weeks ago that he'd been playing around with this. So I thought, why not? Let's ask the bot in one question, something along the lines of, hey, wouldn't it be great if you could do voice recognition for the ask a question box, and then auto submit once the input has been received? And within one question, it produced the full HTML, the full client script, the amendments to the server script, and we have a working voice recognition system in 2-3 minutes of just asking a bot, which is kind of cool. Can you explain the Fermi paradox? So it's captured the input, it's now interrogating the API, and the response has now come back at the bottom there.
Wow.
It's kind of cool that kind of feature, literally took 2 or 3 minutes to the bot just boom, produce the code straight away.
And what's doing the listening to the voice? Is it ChatGPT or is it some other service?
So most browsers have got a speech recognition WebKit enabled within them. So and obviously ChatGPT has scoured the web to know what browsers can do what, and essentially it just leverages that sort of inbuilt library in the browser to execute the listen. And then there's various events that hang off the back of that, like stop listening when there's silence for too long, and then just off the back of that, it's put the content into the field, execute the query over the API, deliver the response.
I have to imagine, like, if someone had to given me a list of requirements and said, and we also need voice to text, I would have been going into the doc site of ServiceNow, looking for some API or something. And so you're telling me that this AI knew that that was part of, I guess you're using Chrome, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where this is so powerful, right? Justin, yourself, myself, many of our colleagues and friends in the ServiceNow industry, right? We've built our careers on experiences and knowledge and knowing things, maybe even obscure things, right? And that's where we can deliver a lot of value. But now, that brain space doesn't have to be taken up with that kind of stuff anymore. I mentioned earlier I'm terrible at regex. My friend has tried to teach me regex so many times that I always default to going on those online regex editors to try and figure it out.
Yep.
Turns out I don't need to worry about that anymore because this service can do regex better than anybody that I know, which is just going to free us up to do so much more. Not having to dig into the docs to figure out what's going on.
Yeah. I think one of the things that, as I've played around with it, and I think I'm getting the sense, because you actually showed me on our previous call kind of your history of that conversation you had with it.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on those prompts and asking the AI the right kind of questions to get to a result like this.
Yeah, so with the input boxes, it understood what a HTML input box was straight away, so I didn't need to give it too much more there. But what I ended up with was like a squished box that was like maybe taking up one column in a Bootstrap container. So, the bot didn't immediately think, hey, they're going to be asking me potentially some long questions, better make it a long box. So I had to sort of give it that prompt of, we got the text box, but could we make it fill the width of the container? Now that's where the sort of business analyst lingo started to bleed into knowledge of, web pages, user experiences, ServiceNow, that kind of thing. So there was a line being towed throughout the questioning, but I think that line of knowing how to ask the bot the right things is going to be crucial in the future. People won't need all this knowledge in their head, but they'll need to know how to get to the right answer if it's not in their head. If you're interrogating the bot for answers, you need to know how to ask it the right things in the right way.
So the way you're describing it kind of aligns with my thinking so far, is that it's not so much a replacement for what we do or what other people in tech are doing, but maybe another tool in our toolkit to get there faster, or like you said, overcome an Achilles heel around regex, or for me, I'm colorblind, so colors are a mess for me, right? Even though you said this color is bad.
What does this look like to you? Is this no good?
It looks pink to me, actually.
Okay. It's like a pinky purple gradient into blue all the way across.
Yeah, and I think the blue is
right.
lost on me. When you said it, I saw it, but I don't see it right away. Yeah.
Well, what would be interesting is to obviously in the same conversation with the bot where I asked it to pick a color, maybe ask it if it knows what those colors are, because obviously it gave it to me in the form of either hex codes or RGB codes. But I wonder if it knows what those colors correspond to. Right? I wonder if it knows that this hex code is a soft purple.
Or did you ask for a gradient?
I did specify a gradient. I said, yeah, give it some kind of gradient. So it did know what a gradient was at least.
Got it. Yeah, this is exciting stuff. And I want to go back to something you said at the very beginning when you were kind of describing it, just to make sure it's clear to anybody who's watching this. There was an intermediate step of it gave you something, and then you had to put that into ServiceNow, right? So it wasn't feeding it in there automatically. You still needed your hands on a keyboard and your mouse to do that, right?
Absolutely,
cool.
Yeah. I mean, this was like a little pet project for a couple of hours. But you can see here, this is some of the widget code. Now, I will say right up front, the bot doesn't know best practice, right? And this is one of those occasions where I'm going to put my hand up and say, I didn't write this, so you can't judge me. But for a bot, it's incredibly impressive. It has a few biases, so it prefers to just use JavaScript where it can. It didn't seem to know, or it didn't seem to want to use AngularJS right off the bat until I told it could. But at which point it kind of deferred back to using raw JavaScript, which is quite interesting. But I'm fairly confident if I told it, using AngularJS as a primary preference, could you give me this kind of a requirement? I'm fairly confident it would, go down that kind of path. So to your original point, right? I'd asked the question to a bot. The bot would produce some of the code for me, and I would copy and paste that into the relevant fields here on this widget. Now, the reason I did it that way is because this was just a little pet project. You know, I'm sure, Justin, you're familiar, and some of the viewers are familiar, that actually, you know, you can get the capability, if you have the time, to go and, you know, almost get the bot to be a listener, maybe it's a Chrome or Firefox extension, and build your own version of this where you're just talking to the bot and telling it where to put the responses, and it will, you know, that is absolutely achievable, which is another incredible thing. I think in our conversation before, we were talking about how this is, you know, only a few steps away from, you know, Iron Man's Jarvis. I'm just imagining like this little button, or a big red button on my desk, like a big help button where I smash it and go, I can't remember how to do glide ajaxes, give me the syntax and put it in this field, and then boom, it's just there for me.
Yeah, you know, I'm having all these thoughts as you're talking, and bear with me here for a second, because I want to get an idea out there and have you follow me. Is in your role as an architect, right? You are more senior in the implementation or the configuration of something like ServiceNow. So in your role, you probably have someone junior to you that might be writing code and promoting that to production, and you do something like a code review, and you look over it, hey, you're missing comments, or this isn't best practice. So your role as an architect is kind of vetting your own stuff and what other people are doing. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And would you say that an AI producing something like this kind of allows you to continue to do that same thing, but without that person, without having to educate that person and then kind of help them along? It's generating it, and you're cleaning it up maybe and aligning it to best practice, but there's what am I trying to say here? You're not.
Well, it's freeing a person up from something that a bot can do, but it's essentially, I think what you're describing is like linting rules, like in the ServiceNow JavaScript script box, where you can type and it will, you know, maybe underline a variable that's misdeclared, or where you've mixed spaces and tabs, right? It's that, but maybe taking it a step further than just those sort of basic rules, and actually looking at what best practices or good practices, like adding comments to functions that are particularly long, or breaking them up if they're too long. And you don't have to go off and define those in some arbitrary way using maybe some crazy regex that I couldn't write. Instead, you could just tell the bot, hey, I want you to review this code. It's a script include in ServiceNow. Could you make sure that I've commented it appropriately? Could you make sure that my methods aren't too long? Can you make sure, you know, whatever, right? Whatever rule base you want it to do. And it could do that role of a peer reviewer. Absolutely.
Yeah, going back again to something you said earlier, the surprises too, like, you know, using the WebKit for the voice to text is something that I think you had said it, but when we talked before, a business person coming in. Let me let you articulate that use case better, because I think you said it really well. Tell me about a non-coder developer and what you think could be potentially, you know, not now, but down the road, of them using something like this to get to a result.
I mean, it's early doors, but my mindset over the past month of playing with this has changed drastically. The first time I engaged with the bot, I asked it a few things and it was interesting. I asked it a few ServiceNow things and it gave me some okay answers. Not great, not terrible. So my impression then was, it's cool. It's not gonna help you much. After a month of learning how to talk to the bot properly, my stance has changed now, and it's actually use it. Use it for anything you're not sure of. Use it for anything you can't remember, but just remember that it doesn't know what best practice is, and you will still need to go and validate whatever approach it gives you. I would also say that any piece of code that this produces is not suitable for a production environment unless it's been thoroughly tested, thoroughly reviewed. You know, one of the other biases that I've noticed in the code it produces is it doesn't like to deal with sad path, right? Happy path, sad path coding. Happy path is everything's present, let's go down this path to achieve a result. Sad path is, oh, something's missing somewhere in the chain, let's, you know, handle it in some way, shape or form. So with that being said, I think as a way to reinforce knowledge, learn something new, give you a foundation, I think this is an incredible tool to any developer, any administrator, essentially any business user who's is interested in not just ServiceNow but any platform. I was using it yesterday to give me some crazy complex Excel formula to get data in a certain way that I wanted to, and it saved me hours, absolutely hours of scraping through the docs for it.
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit, like when I started working with programming, God, when I was in middle school or high school, and as soon as Google came out, right, it was like, oh, I don't understand this. I can just go search and hit a forum or some other code repository as kind of things evolved over the years. And even now in ServiceNow, when you're trying to do something and you hit a wall or a gap in knowledge, like you were saying, you go search, you go look out there. And what I hear you saying is maybe add this as the first or second step, including
Absolutely.
that search.
Yeah. I think that is, it's like having a good friend who's really good at something you're not, and just going to them. But you don't have to bother a person. You know, you can go to the bot and get an initial answer and work your way from there. I guess the one thing I would say is, you know, don't be disheartened if the first time you ask it a question, it produces something maybe, you know, a bit rough, a bit not quite what you were after. There is an art to learning how to speak to the bot. The questions I was asking it a month ago versus the questions I'm asking it today, I mean, there's a huge change in the way I write to the bot and knowing what kind of output I'm looking for. So yeah, don't be disheartened, but it's an incredible tool.
And it sounds like then you're encouraging, say, go out there, learn it. If anything, learn how to interact with it and learn its pitfalls, learn what it's good at. Because what's going to come in the future? Like, this is evolving pretty fast, and it's really going viral among tech enthusiasts as far as experimenting. What do you see in the future?
It's a really good question, and I think the it's one of those things where I imagine what it was like to be somebody around the time the first sort of commercial, or I guess non-commercial airplanes were introduced, and it was a bit novel, and people didn't know what to do with it, and they were like, that's cool, you can dangerously fly across the sky, but really the potential opportunities weren't fully understood at the time, right? People knew what they could do with it, but it took 50, 60 years for it to be realised, you know, this behemoth of global logistics and everything else that surrounds that industry now. I think we're in the very early doors of what this kind of platform can do. I see hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, you know, this sort of a platform taken away a lot of the monotony in people's jobs. There was a video, I think last year, where Google put out a conversation with an AI, and he tried to book like a hairdresser's appointment over the phone with somebody. I'm not sure if you saw that one, but it used, you know, an actual voice to interact with another human being, and the human being didn't even know it was talking to an AI, right? You know, with that said, you know, the possibilities here, you know, are everything from help desk conversations with a bot that you don't know is a bot to, you know, what about like, you know, mental health therapy, you know, psychologists, all the sort of people, they're hard to get a hold of, and they're expensive. Well, you know, why not just get a bot, train it on psychology for 2 years, feed it into the model, and then open up a bot instance where anyone can go for mental health support. You know, it's baffling the things that you could do with this thing.
Yeah. You're
I mean, what do you think? What do you think? The bot. Where do you think it's going to go? What do you think the sort of short term looks like versus long term?
I think I want to be careful about predicting because.
But you can go back to your video in like 5 years ago. Told you so.
Yeah, I want to be careful, but I want to. I mean, you've probably seen some of my videos. I'm passionate about learning. I'm passionate about pushing the boundaries and seeing what can be done, what's possible. And, you know, I immediately leapt towards the kind of artistic side of this.
Yeah.
And I feel like people like you, there's Jace and some other people in the ServiceNow community who've immediately gone to this tech-oriented view of the coding piece of it, which totally just went right over my head. I was like, my mind never went there. And I really, so I want to understand, you asked what I think. I think what you said earlier, in so many words, is we need to understand and we need to learn how to make this part of our daily practice, even if it's just informative, so that we can use that as another input to do our jobs better or to do whatever we're passionate about better. And in order to do that, we need to not put up a wall for this, and actually just start messing with it, start playing with different AI engines, and understand the ins and outs. Because I think the flywheel's in motion now, and this isn't going to slow down. I think it's going to accelerate. And like many things on the tech side of things, or probably just in society in general, that acceleration tends to leave people behind that don't keep up. And
Yeah.
I'm more concerned that there's some old philosophies and some legitimate nervousness about stuff like this. But I think you need to recognize that for what it is and still go learn this. That's it, everyone. Thanks to Mike Heron for coming on the channel. If you would, please give the video a like, leave a comment, extend your welcome, let Mike know what a great job you did on the integration. Leave your thoughts, leave your comments down in the comment section below. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please like, please subscribe, or share it with somebody who you think might be interested in ChatGPT or artificial intelligence writing its own integrations with applications, maybe even ServiceNow. And until next time, don't forget to always be learning.